Welcome back to A Musician and a Filmmaker, the only podcast that isn't about Animal Collective, but it is. It's about Animal Collective, and today we're joined once again by Josh Dibb, aka Deakin, and for the first time, Noah Lennox, aka Panda Bear, to talk about the new Panda Bear solo release, Sinister Grift. It's finally here. You teased the title like almost 5 years ago on Twitter. It's coming out tomorrow, the 28th, so that's super exciting. We've been listening to it all month. We love it. We're super excited to talk about it with you guys, and so thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
We'll start with the tweet. You tweeted PB Sinister Grift 202X in April 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So you talked about how you had that name just like on a list of phrases and words that you were going to use eventually. So we know that the music didn't influence the name, but did the name influence anything in the music?
I'm sure it did, but it's hard to say exactly how. Nothing I really noticed. I mean, I feel like a lot of stuff or the experiences and emotions, it's not autobiographical, the record, but a lot of it is inspired by stuff that I went through, but I hadn't gone through any of that really when I came up with the title. So it's kind of hard to say that there's a direct link, but I'm sure it did in some way.
So, I mean, a lot of these songs do go back a few years. You debuted a lot of them at the Madrid concert in 2021 in like early shapes and forms. So, were all the other songs from that ended up on the record conceived around the same time?
I think about half of them I wrote for that Madrid show, and the other half I did in the kind of year before Josh and I recorded.
So, like, something I think a lot of people pick out when they listen to those bootlegs from the Madrid concert and the practice sessions that you also uploaded is the bendy guitar effect, for lack of a better term. Did you explore that at all in the studio? Because notably, it's not on there as much. I think there's some kind of hints to it in Noah, the LG for Noah Lou song. But yeah, did you explore that effect at all in the studio?
We didn't. It didn't last long. I think we probably tried it a couple times. The demo that I did for Venom's In has it a bunch, although it lost it because when I sent it around to people, like friends of mine, they were like, maybe the guitar could be different. And so it didn't last long. I mean, I feel like we tried for every song. We tried a bunch of different guitar sounds. Until we found something we liked, but the bendiness, I guess, is reserved for more of a live thing.
So, like, when you had this batch of songs, or you're working on these songs, at what point did you show Josh the demos? And Josh, what was your kind of take? Like, did you think, oh, I could do this and that with that, or was it more following like Noah's lead of what he wanted out of the songs?
It was a combination of both. When he the first, I mean, there was kind of like an initial, just before I'd even ever heard anything, just him suggesting that we'd work on this together, and I think that I have watched and been part of or been close to Noah's evolution as a songwriter since the very beginning, and I just kind of knew there was no question that if that really felt good to him, that it would be awesome to be involved. So I think in some ways I was kind of all in without even hearing anything. When he first sent me the first batch of demos, I think my initial response, whether this land, I don't, I mean, he can speak to whether or not this felt good to him or not, but I acknowledged to him that I basically was like, man, these sound like Panda Bear songs, like no question, like, yeah, these are good. But a lot of them didn't really have lyrics yet. And some of them didn't even really fully have melodies that he had translated to. And some of them are even just kind of like the chord progressions and the kind of the vibe. And I was like, these are good vibes. Like I'm going to start resonating with these when there are emotional melodies and lyrics, especially. Like that's kind of where I start to really like where things go from being like this is cool to like, okay, this is special. And then other ones, I think they were already like that, like what was called Song of Evil and is now Elegy for Noah Lou. That was one where I think I just was like, we're doing this song, and I don't even know if Noah was fully on board with that.
I wasn't,
but I just I was basically like, if I'm doing this record, we're doing that song. And I think once we got into actually tracking stuff, I think Noah already had a pretty clear sense of what he wanted his hands to do performance wise on each guitar piece, and I don't think there was too many instances where I really suggested a change in how he was playing. But I think I had a pretty heavy hand in deciding how things were going to sound. I know Fairy Lady, for example, is one that I just was like, I think this should be acoustic. Like, and I just kind of told him, like, here, take the acoustic guitar, do it. I'm going to record it. I'm actually going to double track it. I'm going to pan those left and right. We're going to make this more of like a percussion based rhythm track rather than like a drum kit based percussion track. I wanted to kind of, so he gave me a fair amount of leeway to, or as I say, he gave me a lot of rope, to do well with, or to hang myself with, or to hang him with. But so I think it was pretty collaborative. I mean, there's no, obviously the songs are Noah's songs, and he very much had already established kind of the groove, rhythm, kind of direction of the guitar playing, and in some cases think, just as well. I mean, that kind of like downward guitar slot, like the part of it was like, right, that's like an essential part of the song. So how do we really like get that? And that led to that one in some ways being a pretty straight kind of sounding, just warm, distorted kind of 70s sound. And in other cases, I think it felt a lot more open to interpretation. I know Song of Evil or Elegy for Noah Liu is one that I think I went into the studio like an hour and a half before Noah even got there, and just I knew the chords, and I was kind of messing around with guitars and different pedal chains. I brought a lot of pedals with me. That was the main thing I brought to Lisbon, and I just like eventually got that effect. And Noah walked in the door, and I was like, I think I got an effect for this one, and he picked it up and he was like, sounds cool, and we tracked it. Like that was it. There was no like back and forth. And I'm sure in other cases I was like, what about this, like this thing? And he was like, no. So I think we just kind of,
well, we both did a performance on that one. You did a performance on the pedal chain, and I played the guitar.
Yeah, that's true. I kind of forgot. I was like, I was tweaking knobs as he was playing for Elegy.
I don't know. I think we did it a couple times. I'm not sure we used all of it, but because I think we retracked the guitar on top of it or something. But
yeah, no. Well, I think what ended up happening, we had when we first did it, the way that pedal, but the way that effect chain works, it kind of catches up with the performance about like midway through the first phrase, or like midway through the first section. And we were kind of aware that the first bit of it was like, oh, it's a little bit like it's like a little seasick or something. We were like, all right, we'll fix that later. I'll reamp it. I'll like get the pedal chain going. And I think it's possible that the actual final performance in there is maybe like a compilation of two performances. Maybe like the first half is the first one and the second half is the second, or something like that. It's not like a wildly composed one or composited one. But I think eventually we just decided that first seasick moment was actually a feature more than a bug, and felt like there was just something organic and natural that came out of that, and it was kind of just worth keeping rather than trying to get it perfect.
That one and Praise were two big ones of yours that I probably would have left off.
Yeah, Praise. Yeah, that's right. I kind of forget that Praise, both of them. It's just because they're really emotional songs. I praise maybe more than any song on the record, and it's probably surprising to hear because it's such a sunny, upbeat song. But I've choked up to that song many times. Like once he laid, like I knew what the lyrics were and he tracked them, I would often start to like, very literally physically choke up listening to it. So it just was a very emotional song to me, and kind of the meaning and heart behind it felt really, really important to me, and I connected with a lot. So
it's cool.
Awesome. Yeah, you know what? It's an emotional record. There's like a lot of times that I found myself getting pretty emotional listening to it. And actually, I'll tell you a little story, because when I listened to it for the first time, I was sent it while I was on vacation at Universal Studios in Orlando. And it was killing me to be like in these long lines for the ride and have the record, but like not be able to listen to it. So finally, later at night, when I was in the hotel room, I got a little drunk and I listened to it, and I wrote this while I was listening to it. So this is like literally a snapshot of where I was at that moment. It's 1 a.m. I'm about 8 beers deep and listening to Sinister Grift on my headphones, looking out of the window of my hotel room 10 floors up at the empty swimming pool below and the glow of the amusement park lights in the distance. And there are these little luminescent bugs appearing on the window. They're lighting up almost at random. Am I really seeing them? It feels like maybe I'm imagining them. Listening to Elegy for Noah Liu, my wife's snores in the background are creeping into the sonic atmosphere of the song through my headphones and are oddly in syncopation with the music. And I shit you not, a fucking butterfly has just flown up and over the entire building. I wasn't aware they could fly so high.
Very cool.
Nice.
Yeah. So I ended up looking up how high butterflies can fly. 19,000 feet.
Wow.
Whoa.
Isn't that nuts? Like,
That is crazy.
apparently they fly over the Himalayan mountains.
Had no idea.
Wild.
So absolutely wild. But another thing that was wild
Whoa.
is Greg noticed something about Elegy for Noah Liu and a connection to Scheherazade.
Yeah, you said in a Rolling Stone interview that there was a secret hidden in that song, and I was wondering because I'm listening to Elegy, and it sounds like the sound effect around like 3 minutes 47 seconds is the same as the intro to the studio version of Scheherazade. Now I'm not sure if that's just a similar like preset or something, but was that intentional?
No, I think that's just a similar sound or something.
All right, so I'm just hearing things. Got it.
I think so. Sorry.
Can you give us a hint on what the secret is, or
Is the secret in Scheherazade or the secret is in Elegy?
and Elegy? Yeah.
This is news to me, I think.
I'm not totally sure what I was talking about.
So it was in the
All right.
Rolling Stone Japan interview, so it might have been a problem with translation because obviously when we read that over here, we have to translate like the Japanese text. So
It could be. It could be that. Yeah, I'm not
Could be
sure
that.
what I was talking about, to be honest.
All right. We'll make something up and say that that's what you said.
all right.
No, we
Works for
won't.
me.
When you choose singles for the album rollout, what's the process for that like? Is it like you come to the label with the idea, or the label here's the album and they make a decision? Do you know when you're writing the songs that you're like, oh, this is a single, and you want to bring it to them as a single, and then how does that all come about?
For me, I think it's probably different with AC, but for PB stuff, I usually like to leave that up to the label. I feel like since they're doing this thing with me, they're fronting a lot of money for it. It's something we're doing together. So I like if I feel like it's a decision like that where it doesn't really matter that much to me, I usually let them. And also I feel like that's kind of their side of things, deciding how to like take the thing and translate it or deliver it to people. I feel like that's what they're there for in a lot of ways. So I usually leave those kinds of decisions to them. If it seems really, if it really doesn't make sense to me, I'll say something. But typically I feel like they make pretty good decisions. I have to say I wasn't super keen about Defense as the first single, but I think because Diamond Jubilee had done so well, it felt like kind of low hanging fruit to me in a way that I just thought was kind of corny, but it worked, I guess.
I was surprised. I wasn't like included in those decisions at all, but I definitely I mean it's a great song, but I think to me it felt funny because it just felt like it wasn't I felt like there was other songs that sort of represented the entirety of the record a little bit more that kind of like the scope of it. And I felt like that one is a very particular flavor that I think works really well in the position it has on the record and has a lot of meaning within the context, but it felt like a funny one to kind of be like, and here's the next era. It felt like a funny introduction to me, but you know, I'm not paid to make those decisions either. So
Yeah, I was gonna say it works both ways. It works as a lead single, and then it also works as the closer to the album in context. It was actually kind of satisfying listening to the full album and being like, okay, this actually makes a lot more sense following everything that it follows. So that
I kind
it
of
was
feel
cool
that way
to-
about all of the songs, though. So any single they could have chosen, I would have felt like it doesn't really work in the same way if it's not in the context of the rest of the stuff. But I probably would have gone 50 milligrams left to my own devices, but it's fine.
Jordan kept hoping it was going to be 50 milligrams. Every time they would be like, oh, there's a new music video coming out, he'd be like, it's going to be 50 milligrams. No.
I felt it in my gut, but my gut was wrong.
I'm really bad at anticipating how people are going to feel about stuff, though. I'm almost always wrong. So, but I'm not sure I'm fit to make those kinds of decisions.
It's hard though because it's like you've got all these songs. It's like picking a favorite child or something, right? Like they're all your favorite. You created them, so I think it is a little bit easier for somebody else that's kind of removed to be like, that should be a single, or you know.
Sometimes there's stuff that, I mean, it feels really typical for us that there's songs going into recording where you feel like these 3 or 4 or whatever it is, these are the ones, and then through recording, some kind of bubble up, and some don't really come together in the same way, or it's like some songs start up here and the other songs in the recording process kind of reach that level or maybe a bit above, but these ones maybe don't rise any higher. And I do feel like there's songs that feel more kind of immediate sometimes, but again, I usually I like to let the label decide that.
With regards to this album, this collection of songs, I guess it's a question for both of you, like influences leading up to it. Were there mutual influences? I know on Noah, your Twitter account, or X, I guess it's called now, there was lots of like little video snippets.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people were like, oh, these are little clips from the record. But I guess they were more like just sources of inspiration for the record.
That was usually something I made that day, and I would just fire it off, just kind of to have fun. I think all of that was made after the record was done. Like we finished May of last year. It's been done for a long time.
For what it's worth, I like those clips too, and I'm like, well, let's make that record now. Let's make the record that sounds like that.
I think a lot of people would agree. Those clips sound awesome.
It could be. I don't know. I just making stuff.
Was it the same case with the little clips from the 404 sampler that you had posted like a year or so earlier than that?
I was I think because I was trying to clean up the studio, I found a 303 that was working and a bunch of old memory cards, and I was just going through, and anything that I thought sounded cool, I just made little videos of. But that's all that was. That was all old stuff, all like kind of person pitch Aerozone stuff.
Oh, that's cool. Well, you guys, I guess this is your first time working on a solo album together since the very first one, the disowned self-titled Panda Bear by Panda Bear, which this podcast gets its name from.
No, it's Young Prayer is the answer to that question.
Young Prayer, Josh and I did recorded together, and then I think we tried to mix it a little bit, but then ultimately Josh, Rusty, Dave, and Brian mixed that record, right?
I was less involved with the mixing. I tracked the record, so we tracked that one down in Baltimore, and for various reasons, which I honestly don't remember, and may just literally be that though I don't know, I wasn't up for the task, and so I think Dave and Rusty and Brian, for some reason I thought Eric was involved too, but I might be making that up. But anyway, yeah, there were a bunch of people that were involved that I wasn't involved in the mixing, but that was the last record.
I was trying to say that you helped him start Soccer Star Records to get the distribution and all that with the indie, music scene back then. That's kind of what I was referring to. So,
Gotcha.
Reuniting on this album, was it just like it felt natural to, like, Noah? I believe you said before that you reached out to him to invite him over to come produce the album. So was it just a casual thing, or like were you considering other producers before you were like, I should just get Josh because everything he makes sounds incredible?
I never considered anybody else, to be honest. From really early on thinking about making it, I just always assumed it was going to be Josh. I had just finished building a small studio down the street here, and it just seemed, two things. One, I liked a lot of the mixing work that Josh had been doing and production work he'd been doing recently. I felt like he was developing a real sort of signature thing that I thought was cool. I feel like he has a pretty different sensibility about music. He's, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would paint you as a more lyrics and melody driven music listener, Josh. So I was kind of curious how the stuff might sound kind of filtered through his POV. But also there was like a symmetry to the doing this with him as the first kind of big project in the studio. Having a studio having my own room has always been kind of a dream of mine. I was always sharing a space here for the last 20 years or so. And I thought there was a cool symmetry to the fact that Josh and I started recording music together, and then this would be the first project in this space that had been sort of like a lifelong ambition for me. I like connections like that.
So, Josh, was it easier to work in that environment with Noah just because you guys are, very old friends? And, was it like easier to have that sort of working relationship in the studio than opposed to like, working for your boss on the Linear B album?
He's not my boss. We're coworkers.
I'm the boss.
Okay, sorry.
I tell him what to do.
I got a mistake.
I'm working on his next record right now. That's kind of what I'm in the middle of doing.
Oh,
awesome.
Yeah, I think it was a bit of both. I mean, I'm at this point, few people that know much about me don't know that I'm a pretty anxious person, and I think that in some ways it felt very easy and natural, the idea of doing it, and very exciting, but also I felt a lot of like let me see. There's a lot of ideas I'm trying to convey here. I think as a producer in general, or someone that's engineering, whatever the role is, and trying to help someone else facilitate their idea, I think being as humble as possible within that is actually really crucial, in the sense that I wanted Noah to make the record he really wanted to make. And if that involved me, that's amazing. And I'd love to do it. But if it doesn't, like, that's okay too. And so when Noah first brought it up to me, which was while we were tracking time skiffs, I had done like a rough mix of Prester John that I sort of had started mixing some of his drums and a few things on like an early version of that song. And he responded to it really well. Even to the point of suggesting that I mix time skiffs, which ended up not being what we did. But I think at that moment, he just kind of was like, well, you should just do my next record. And kind of in some ways, until we actually approved mixes at the very end of the process, but certainly up until I actually showed up in Lisbon, I kind of kept reminding him that if he changed his mind, he could I was like, you don't owe this to me. If something else comes up, like, I just want you to make the record that you want to make. But he seemed really insistent on it. So I kind of went into it with a lot of like a combination of excitement, high hopes, and yeah, certainly like strong ideas, I guess, of my own, or the way that I want to approach things, and felt excited about that collaboration. But I didn't really, in a sense, know what it was going to feel like. I think my experience of being in the studio with Noah, I guess since Young Prayer, has been different. I think the way that the band feels in a studio is different than how what we did together felt. And I wanted it to feel that way. Like I really, what's that?
I said that's an understatement.
Yeah. Yeah, no comment. But I felt like the role I wanted to play and being in that room with him, I very much did want to call back to the 30-year-old friendship with someone I've known since I was a kid, and my sense of responsibility as a facilitator for someone else's music, to really be in service to them. And that felt really different to what, I think when we're in the studio together with Animal Collective, there's a lot more, for better and for worse. It's not generally awesome, but like more ego clashing, and more kind of like four people trying to kind of establish their own place in a song, which I think is awesome. And I think in this case, it just was like, I'm thrilled Noah gave me space to do things that feel like me, and that I can hear myself on the record. But like, the only reason that works for me is because he was thrilled with the outcome. It had nothing to do with, if he had not been thrilled, it would have been like, cool, we'll turn that fader down, or we'll change the effect, or we'll do whatever. So I'm not sure if I'm entirely answering the question you asked, but I think for me, it was something that I was really excited to do, and also made no assumptions that it was the right choice until it clearly was. And to me, it was not clearly the right choice until sometime, I guess multiple moments throughout the process, once we actually started, where I would see his response and see that it was positive. Yeah, and just have that sense that like the dynamic actually did feel really good. I kind of always carry with me a fear that like things are going to go south or go sour. And so I'm kind of always on a little bit of high alert. It's like, is Noah feeling good? Is is today a good day? Are we getting somewhere good? Is this good? Yeah, he seems to be doing good. All right, we're doing good. Like another day. So
Josh and I are kind of opposite in that way. I'm always assuming things is going to be fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely a doom forecaster.
Well, you're obviously the yin to each other's yang, which comes across on the record. And I got to say, like, the production on this, Josh, my God, man, like, it is so good. I saw your show 2 weeks ago, Noah, here in Toronto. Mm-hmm. And after the show, I was smoking weed with Danny Perez outside, and we were both just gushing about the production. Like,
Oh, shucks.
Were there any challenges in the studio, or was it a pretty smooth sailing process? Like any obstacles you ran into?
There was challenges insofar as there's a bunch of songs that we didn't really get. There's maybe
Well,
Well,
two.
Virginia Tech we eventually got, but we couldn't. We
I
didn't
mean,
solve it.
Virginia Tech to me is like almost like I'm still bummed it's not on the record. To me, that one is like personally, I think we fully
It's a
got it.
great song. Yeah, love that song.
I just felt like it didn't fit in the story
Yeah,
that the record I felt was telling.
no,
And
I
also
do get that.
we I feel like we upgraded it a little bit after I left it off the sequence. I feel like it definitely stepped up a couple notches after that. Maybe if it had been like that at the time, maybe, but who knows?
No, I mean, it totally makes sense to me. But yeah, there are still two two sessions left that I actually still do want to give a pass at some point, but just
There's, there's
didn't quite land.
another new one that we kind of did a total 180 on right near the end as a kind of Hail Mary to save it. And then we did a version of Never Ending Game remix that I did, but we'll see. We'll see if we can get it going.
That would be cool because like hearing the live version of that was like it was spine chilling. So good. The remix was pretty rad in itself, but I think it gets goes up to another level with the remix of the remix.
It'd be cool
So,
to just keep it as a live thing, sort of like Preakness. Although there's recorded versions of Preakness, it feels like something that just sort of exists on stage to me.
Have you guys thought about doing a live album at all for this era or any of the more recent Animal Collective shows?
Most definitely, we have a plan in
Yeah.
place.
Sweet.
Yeah,
Sweet.
I've been trying to push that one forward for sure. Kind of based on my sadness that I didn't have that idea earlier, or I did have that idea, but I remember, I think it was the Buoys tour, going to see Noah at 930 Club, and it was like the double octatrack phase, and I just remember like the flow of that set and the way that he just was moving from like new songs to old songs, the kind of crossfading and kind of DJ mentality to stuff, and it kind of gave me a similar. I was like, there should be like a Daft Punk live version of Noah's set from that era specifically, and I remember just being in some ways feeling like, oh, that's kind of like a lost opportunity that never happened, because I think there's something really special that Noah does in a live setting that he usually edits a lot on record, which is just to allow outros and intros and kind of like really get into these like really special places. And so I pretty early on in this live era, and it may or may not be me, but I pushed him and other people to the idea that it would be worth trying to record some of these sets and putting together a proper live era album from this era, because I think it's pretty special to catch the difference between the two approaches.
That's
Nice.
exciting. Looking forward to it.
Totally. I want to take a step back there for a second because we were talking about Never Ending Game, and while it's not necessarily Sinister Grift related, I still feel like I've always wanted to know this, because both of you guys, when you guys do remixes, it's not like sticking a club beat on top of a track that doesn't have a club beat. Like, you're literally making a new song that feels like a song from your own catalog out of materials from another person's song. Like, at what point did you guys sort of start kind of reinventing the term remix with that approach?
I'm sure other people have done it before, but the first time I did it was the first remix opportunity I got, which was the No Twist. Do you know them?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Oh yeah, Boneless.
And
I'd
just been. It was around maybe right after Person Pitch, and I had just been using the 303s, so it just seemed sort of instinctual to take stems that they gave me and try to make samples out of it. And I guess because I was in that mode, it just sort of seemed like the way to do it. I feel like maybe Dave had done one like that at some point before the No Twist thing. I feel like maybe maybe it was like an instrumental band or something. Do you remember what I'm talking about, Josh?
I don't totally remember, to be honest with you.
He'd done a
I'd have to
remix, and maybe he made a song. I can't remember, but I'm sure neither he nor I are the first ones to do something like that. But I do think it reminds me a lot of like rhythms in Jamaica, how there'd be like the bass, the instrumentation of the song, and it would go through multiple lives, having other people like singers kind of write or toast on top of it. I've always liked that idea of, or it's like what a beat is now. Beats can kind of have multiple people doing their thing on top of it, whether it's a verse or a top line or whatever. I'd kind of like to do that with the Sinister Grift stuff, because it seems to me to be just like beats, and maybe like other singers could take the kind of instrumental foundation and do their own thing on top. I think that would be cool.
Well, speaking of collaborators adding stuff to other tracks, you guys worked. This is technically an Animal Collective album, very technically. You guys had not only Josh producing it and performing certain parts on it, but you also have Dave contributing, and I heard that Brian contributed at least to like half the songs on the album with like various sounds and whatnot. Where did that idea come from? Was that something you came up with in the studio, or was it going in you knew you wanted to do that?
So even before Josh signed on, I had asked, because I do a lot of features and remix stuff, I asked Brian to make essentially a sound pack of stuff. We were also not, AC wasn't working at the time, so I wanted to try to give him something to work on as well. And I think I asked him for like 6 different folders of stuff. So there was vocals, noises, basses, risers, stuff, categories like that. And he would just make me like 20 sounds in the thing. And we wound up using them, I think, on every song, almost every song for sure.
I think there's something on almost every track. I'd have to double check. I mean, some of them are almost like just mixed in with the percussion and rhythm section, so they'd really just essentially like non drum or not, yeah. But then obviously in things like Elegy, it's like
Elegy has just like a wave of them that we just kind of strung together.
There's a pretty awesome wave of them in Fairy Lady too. There's like a kind of a lead up to like one of the choruses that gets pretty dense with Brian sounds.
It sounds like I love you, baby.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff in there. There's like 4 or 5 things kind of happening all at once. But yeah, that's one of them.
They're like morphed or manipulated, but other times they're just sort of, I think, left kind of as Brian did them. But I think because I figured Josh was working on it, Brian was now a part of it. I really wanted to find a place for Dave to be on it, and I knew he would do really well with. I asked him specifically for a noise solo on Ends Me. I knew he would really crush that. And then there just kept being these moments and songs where I think partly because I had done all the bass, guitar, drums, singing, all that, I was kind of ready for just kind of a different flavor on the thing. So whether it was Josh or somebody else, we just started asking other people if they would try stuff on it.
I think the Walsh thing was actually kind of surprising in a way, because Noah had, for Venom's In, he'd already written this synth line for that he had done on a synthesizer, but he's like, I know I want this to be lap or pedal steel. And so we were trying to figure out who that could be. We knew it would probably happen in Baltimore. And I'd worked with Susan Alcorn before, RIP. She just passed away really sadly. And that was initially my idea. We had tracked her for a bunch of stuff on Eucalyptus for Dave's record. And I thought she'd be like the best choice. And then I just happened to be at a show at the place where my studio is, and a local band that I was kind of friends with already were playing a kind of a country set that they normally don't do. And this kid I'd never seen before was playing lap steel. And he just kind of had a good vibe. And I was like, this is kind of our world. And you know, I wonder if this kid would be into it. And I kind of on a whim just went up to him. I was like, hey man, do you ever do session work? And he was like, I absolutely do. So we brought him in, and Noah's idea was Venom's In, but I think once he started doing stuff, I was like, I feel like there's a place for that sound on other songs in this record. So we tried a handful of other things, and I think one of the things he tried was for one of the songs that we haven't finished, or nothing's going on right now. But the stuff he did on 50 milligrams and the other one that he's on that I can remember right now. But yeah, I feel like he really
50 milligrams is the other one he's on.
Yeah. There's 3 though, right? It's Venoms and 50 milligrams, and there is a third.
Does that like shriek.
There you go.
Nice.
That's it.
So other collaborators that were mentioned, but I don't know, didn't necessarily make it to the album. Cass McCombs on Venom's Inn. I know there's like a 7-inch coming out for Record Store Day.
Yes.
That's going to include the kind of demo that features him on it. Is there a reason that he didn't end up on the final track?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird story. So I wrote the song for him, just being a fan. I know him a little bit, but not super well. And I just sent it to him like, hey, man, really appreciate your music. And I made this for you, not with any expectation, really. And then I think after Josh and I started doing songs, pretty sure I asked Cass if I could use it for the record. He ended up doing my vocal. He kind of redid it with his own vocal. That's what'll come out on Record Store Day. So it's like the demo with his vocal instead. I said, here's the words I did, but if you want to change them or do your own, that's cool. And he changed one word and he came up with the title.
What was the word?
The word was, I think I was saying out of the everything or into the everything, and he changed it to into the optical.
That's cool because that's my favorite lyric from the song, just because it's so unique. Like I've never heard like the field of vision referred to as the optical before. So.
All the lyrics are really good. This album too, I got to say, lyrically is, I think it adds to that, that emotional aspect of it. It's just, it feels really relatable. There's like a sadness to it, but then it's like, I don't know. I feel like a lot of Animal Collective music has managed to hit this really sweet spot of like having stuff that could be like just devastating, like content wise, but then also makes it like really fun to dance to. So, kudos to you guys for
Nice.
hitting that balance.
Yeah, I sort of thought Cass would just rewrite the whole thing, but I was super psyched that he did his own version of it. I can't say I was expecting that, so it's really, really cool for me.
Totally. And it does sound like a Cass McCombs song. Like when I first heard it, I was like,
I thought that too.
yeah. It's what's the album that has County Line on it? That it's like very in that vein, I feel.
I think it's Catacombs.
Yeah,
That's the one. Yeah.
I love that song.
So good.
All time.
that's a good one.
Well, to go back to Virginia Tech for a second, I was surprised to see when I got the 7-inch that Daniel Lopatin, aka One O Tricks Point Never, is credited on it, and that was like a mind blower to me because for years I've been like, when are One O Tricks Point Never and Panda Bear gonna collab? And then he adds that. It's just that sound at the very end, right? That he added in, or was there there are other flourishes in there?
There's a couple little swings in there that are
Yeah,
him.
the intro is kind of him. The kind of like stuttery intro leading into the song is him, and then
Mhm.
he had some layers that we sprinkled into like some of the vocal things in the middle of the song that kind of just blend in with Noah's vocals, and then at the end is it's a whole melange of like synth solo that I did and like a bunch of bells and stuff I recorded, and then on top of it is this kind of just like Lopatin.
I know Dan he played a festival here called Outfest, which may be Nelson's festival. I'm not sure. Nelson certainly has something to do with it. And it was around Thanksgiving, so I kind of invited anybody who might care about Thanksgiving from the festival to my house, and that's when I met. And since then, we just sort of send each other our records usually when they're done. Talk at festivals and stuff when we play, but I think we're just sort of buddies. And on that one, Rivka would always say it was PB goes country. And I think to try to get away from that, I was like, let's try to get a little OPN energy on this to try to shift it into like a different space a little bit. So that was sort of the idea behind that.
Was that the first time you guys had ever like talked, or you had ever asked him to collab on anything?
It was, yeah. Well, no, that's not true.
No. There's a. I mean, I don't even want to tease that one because it may never happen. But
We had talked about doing something together before.
All right, cool. Well, I hope
Sorry,
that comes to fruition eventually. No, hey, keep your secrets. I'm fine with it. There's a time for everything. I mean, we waited 5 years for this album, so we can always wait for any exciting thing on the horizon.
Speaking of it being such a long wait, I mean, we've talked to Josh about this before, but Noah, do you find that like the kind of rollout schedule from record labels gets frustrating at all?
Yeah. Yeah, I find it very frustrating. But again, it's their side of the deal. I mean, if I don't want to complain about it because I've entered into this thing with the label, and if that's how they want to do it, that's how they want to do it. I mean, I'll tell them that it's frustrating, but if they feel like it's really important and they think it makes a difference, I either stop working with them or I be quiet about it. Is how I feel about it.
Fair enough.
So Dave and Brian have put out a couple of releases not on Domino. For example, the Fastly split EP that Avi did with Superflower, aka Zoe from Sham, and then Brian did a couple of Geologist solo releases on Dosed, which is Adam McDaniel from Drop of Sun's label. So have you considered doing anything? Because I know you did a few, like correct me if I'm wrong, but the Tomboy singles were all done on different labels, right? So have you thought about doing anything like that in the modern era where you're just constantly pumping stuff out?
I don't think Domino would be cool with that. I am. This is sort of the last Domino thing that I'm under contract for, so the future is kind of unknown for me. But I do like certainly the spirit of that, and maybe is something I'll explore in the future. But I kind of feel like we recorded the record and doing the promo for it, and now this touring thing. I feel like I can't even. It's hard to imagine the future at the moment. I sort of feel like I'm very much entrenched in certainly like the live portion of the thing right now. So who knows where I'll be in a year or two.
One last collaborator question, and maybe the most personal. Your daughter is on this album on Anywhere But Here, speaking Portuguese, sort of in the background, but kind of a in-between verses thing. But that's not her first time on a Panda Bear track, am I right? She does a vocal sample at the end of Part of the Math.
Yeah, Nintendo wouldn't go for it, so we had to re-record that. She crushed it, though. Sounds exactly like the thing.
I know. When I did a cover of it years ago, I just straight up used the Zelda sample because they sounded so similar and I could isolate it. So, but that was a thing. Nintendo, you did have to reach out and ask, and they said no?
Yeah, we did, and they said no, yeah.
When it came to the Anywhere But Here part, was that like you just wrote something and then came to her with it, or you were thinking of having like a female voice read the thing, or what was the process behind that?
I stole the idea from a Louvin Brothers track. It's on Satan is Real. It's the first song. There's like a vocal refrain, and then he kind of talks, or he's telling a story, but it's sort of like a sermon. He's preaching a little bit. Then the vocal refrain comes back, and then he talks for a little bit, and then it finishes with the vocal refrain, I think. But that's sort of set up for a song I just thought was cool, and I thought I'd try my own version of that. Nacha was the first person I thought of, and then I thought maybe Pete, and then I asked Dean Blunt to do it. But he worked at it a while and was like, I can't find myself in it, or can't like figure out something I like with it. So then I went back to Naja and I formally asked her, and she wrote maybe, I didn't really give her a direction as far as what to write about. I just said, just write something that feels meaningful to you in this moment. And she wrote three poems, and we chose the one that thematically kind of fit with the piece that I had already done, but also there was like a type of meter and rhythm to one of the poems she did that really suited the kind of tempo of the song, or like the structure of the song. And I think we only made like one or two edits. It was very left very kind of like as she did it, and she came in, banged it out in like an hour, very professional, and does not want to hear it.
Just like the rest of your discography, apparently.
Yeah, I sort of wonder if she's ever listened to anything. Maybe not.
So I've asked this question to pretty much every member of Animal Collective that has been on our show. So I'm going to ask you, Noah. It's a desert island question. So you go to a desert island, you're stuck there. You can only bring one record of your bandmate's work. Now, I know it's a little tricky when it comes to Josh and Brian because there's only so much that's out there in terms of like full records. However, we've had some pretty creative responses with that. I think Josh said the tape player chants for Brian, even though that's kind of a collaborative thing. And Brian said the live version of Golden Chords by Josh.
Mm-hmm.
So you can get creative with it.
So I have to choose one for each person.
Mm-hmm.
Sleep Cycle for Josh. I would go. I'm gonna go with the new one for Brian, the one that's not out yet.
Shaw Deal, or the other one, the newer one, the hurdy-gurdy one.
One of the other 6.
Yeah, the hurdy-gurdy one that no one's heard yet, but it is
a lot of material. And for Dave, this one's harder to pin down because there's a lot.
Deer Nose.
I might choose one of those tapes that he gave to me and Josh like way back.
That's I just said Deer Nose.
Yeah, I love those, and they'll remind me of when we were young.
Yeah, Dave made when I first was becoming friends with Dave in high school. He twice made me cassettes of like the stuff that he'd been working on that were just these like compilations of tracks that he'd been making on 4-track, and I loved them. We would all trade tapes, but like when he first started making those for me, and I cherish them deeply. And I'm actually at some point about like 6 or 7 years ago, I realized I didn't have one of them and I didn't know where it had went. So I asked him, I was like, hey man, do you still have copies of those? Could you make me one? And he was like, copies? He's like, I made that for you. And a combination of made me feel incredibly distraught and sad because it was like, you know, he was like, I still have the multi-tracks, but like I literally like mixed those down to tape to give them to you. And it was like an incredible collection of songs. So it made me really sad, but it also was like, oh my God, that's like really amazing that I didn't even realize at the time that it was like that personal, even though, I mean, I don't know, whatever. So, but those tapes were really incredible. It's all been downhill since then.
Is that the same era that Noah, you started drawing the little Panda Bear illustrations on where the name comes from and all that?
Yeah, it was around the same time. We were probably like 15, 16, 17.
Yeah, it's like 95, 96.
Just brings it all full circle. So we have to ask every time we have any of y'all on the show, every fan always wants to ask this question. Are there any future plans for the band or solo releases that y'all can share with us, you know, that isn't hidden behind an NDA? Reveal as much or as little as you feel comfortable with.
We have a couple tracks that are that in some ways are kind of Dave and Brian are the most responsible for, but that Noah and I did a bunch of singing on recently that we're trying to figure out a way to release at some point, hopefully in the nearest future, but we don't have like an actual rollout for it. But that and a couple like fundraising compilation tracks that we made over the winter as well that were kind of all of which are really cool, but kind of came together in very kind of remote ways off, I think. And yeah, pretty much in every case, like Dave kind of led the charge on and sort of put together an idea and then sent them around. I was like, if you guys want to add anything to this. So it's been kind of like light collaboration that is probably will start trickling out at some point, but no like larger scale album or touring plans, which I'm sure is the real question you're asking.
Right.
As is always the case, that stuff is kind of just we're in the unknown at the moment.
Into the unknown, out of the optical. Okay, I'll stop. Well, thank you guys so much for being on the show. We really appreciate it. Josh, thanks for being on for the 3rd time. Noah, we appreciate you taking the time. It's just always super. We always super appreciate it because we're just a tiny little podcast. Thanks again so much, guys. Sinister Grift, February 28th, probably the same day you're watching this interview, is out on Domino Records. Go buy it, enjoy it. Go see Noah live in May. I'm going to see you in Dallas at the House of Blues. I'm looking forward to that. Sick. And again, we can't wait to see what the future holds for everything Animal Collective related. So thank you guys so much.
Likewise.
Thank you guys.
Yes. Thanks for having us.
All right.
No problem.
I'll take it easy.
See you, dudes.
Have a good day, guys. Thank you.
See ya.
All right.
All right.
Bye,
Thanks.
Josh.
Bye.
Peace.